Mechanics don't want you to know this, but the black sludge coating your engine's insides right now is costing you horsepower every single mile you drive. And the cure sitting on a shelf at your local hardware store costs about $3. Every single day, thousands of drivers pull into quick lube shops and dealerships and get talked into a $200, sometimes $400 internal flush service. They watch a machine hook up to their engine, run for 20 minutes, and disconnect. And they drive away feeling like they just did something smart for their car. What nobody tells them is what's actually happening inside that engine block while that machine runs. That thick, tar-like sludge that's been baking onto your piston rings and your valve covers for the last 80,000 miles doesn't just dissolve into nothing. It breaks apart. And when it breaks apart wrong, in big chunks, instead of turning into a thin liquid, those chunks go exactly one place. Straight into your oil pickup screen. The tiny mesh filter that's the only thing standing between your oil pump and total engine starvation. Clog that screen, even partially, and you're not looking at a repair bill anymore. You're looking at a replacement engine. That's the dirty secret behind the expensive flush cans and the pricey shop service. They're not always wrong, but they're playing a dangerous game with aggressive detergents that rip sludge off the walls faster than it can safely drain out. And in a high-mileage motor, that's a gamble that has killed more engines than people realize. Old-school fleet mechanics figured out decades ago there was a better way, and it didn't come from a marketing department. It came from the paint thinner aisle of a hardware store. We're talking about high-purity kerosene, sometimes thin diesel fuel, in an exact, controlled ratio mixed directly into your old engine oil before you drain it. Stick with me, because in a few minutes I'm going to give you the precise measurement and the exact number of minutes you can run this mixture before it starts working against you instead of for you. Get that timing wrong, and instead of a clean engine, you get flash rust forming on bare metal surfaces the instant that thin liquid strips away every drop of protective oil film. That's the kind of mistake that turns a $3 fix into a $5,000 teardown. Let's talk about why sanding, scraping, and even most bottled flush chemicals fail to solve this problem the right way. Sludge in an engine isn't just dirt. It's oxidized oil, it's carbon from combustion blow-by, and it's varnish, all cooked together at operating temperature for years until it becomes this thick, gummy substance clinging to metal surfaces. You physically cannot scrape the inside of a running engine. You can't sand piston rings. The only way in is chemical. And the only way it works safely is if the chemical is thin enough to travel everywhere oil travels, but gentle enough that it doesn't shock the internals. Most bottled engine flush products are formulated to be aggressive. They're built to impress you with how much black gunk drains out, because that sells more bottles. But aggressive detergent packages swell rubber seals. They can cause old, brittle gaskets that were holding fine for years to suddenly start weeping oil the day after the flush. That's not a coincidence you'll see reported in forums everywhere. It's chemistry working exactly as designed, just designed for the wrong priority. Designed to look dramatic, not to protect your engine long term. Now here's the molecular piece, because once you understand this, you'll never look at your dipstick the same way again. Kerosene and thin diesel are what chemists call light hydrocarbons. Short carbon chains, low viscosity, and critically, they're solvents for other hydrocarbon-based substances. Your motor oil, even when it's degraded and full of sludge, is still fundamentally a hydrocarbon-based fluid. That means kerosene doesn't attack it like a harsh acid attacking metal. It blends into it. It dilutes it from the molecular level up, lowering the viscosity of the entire oil volume at once. As that viscosity drops, the oxidized sludge particles that were suspended and stuck to metal surfaces lose their grip. They don't get blasted off in big aggressive chunks. They get gently pulled into suspension in a thin, fast-moving liquid that can actually escort them out through the drain plug instead of trapping them in your pickup screen. This is the exact same principle fleet mechanics used on diesel trucks that racked up 500,000 miles before a rebuild. Not because kerosene is some magic cure-all, but because in the correct ratio, for the correct amount of time, it does one job: thin the old oil enough to carry sludge out through gravity, and nothing more. Let's get into the actual walkthrough now, step by step, because the ratio and the timing are everything here, and this is where people mess up. You want your engine warmed up to normal operating temperature first, oil hot, thin, and flowing, exactly like you would before any regular oil change. Shut the engine off. Locate your oil fill cap. For a standard 4 to 6 quart engine, you're looking at adding roughly 10 to 15% of your total oil capacity in kerosene or thin diesel. That usually works out to somewhere around half a quart for a smaller 4-cylinder, closer to 3/4 of a quart for a larger 6-cylinder or V8. Pour it in slow, directly into the fill neck. Start the engine and let it idle. Do not rev it. Do not drive it. Idle only, low RPM, and set a timer the second it starts. This next part is the single most important detail in the entire process. You run this mixture for 10 minutes. Not 15. Not 20 because you got distracted checking your phone. 10 minutes, and the moment that timer hits 0, you shut the engine off and you drain the oil immediately while it's still warm and thin. Here's why that number matters so much, and why I need you to actually respect it instead of guessing. Kerosene and diesel are solvents, but they carry almost none of the lubricating additive package your regular oil has. Zinc, phosphorus, detergents, anti-wear compounds, all diluted down to a fraction of their normal concentration the moment you add that thinner. For 10 minutes at idle, that's a manageable trade-off, because idle RPM keeps bearing loads low and oil pressure requirements minimal. Push past that window, and you start running a bearing surface with essentially unprotected metal-on-metal contact under load your oil was never designed to survive. 15, 20 minutes in, and you're not cleaning an engine anymore, you're wearing down the exact bearing surfaces you were trying to protect in the first place. And that flash rust warning I mentioned earlier, this is where it becomes real. The instant you drain that thinned oil out, every internal surface in that engine is sitting bare, stripped of its protective film, exposed to humidity in the air. If you walk away and let that engine sit open and undrained for even a few hours before your fresh oil goes in, you're inviting surface rust to start forming on your cylinder walls and your camshaft lobes almost immediately. That's why the sequence has to be tight. Warm up, add the mixture, idle exactly 10 minutes, drain immediately, replace your filter, and get fresh oil in within minutes, not hours. While that old contaminated oil is draining, this is your window to swap the oil filter too, because that filter has been catching degraded particles for months, and it's now saturated with exactly the kind of sludge you just spent 10 minutes dissolving. Skipping the filter change here defeats a huge part of the benefit, because you'd be filling a clean engine with fresh oil that immediately starts flowing back through a dirty filter. Once the old oil is fully drained, and I mean give it real time, 10 to 15 minutes hanging upside down over that pan, not just a quick 30-second drain, install your new filter hand tight plus a quarter turn, and fill with the correct fresh oil to the proper level for your engine. Start it, let it idle for about a minute, check for leaks around the filter and the drain plug, then shut it off and check your dipstick level one more time once everything settles. The difference people report after doing this correctly isn't subtle. Oil pressure gauges that were reading low for months creep back toward factory spec because oil is actually flowing through clean passages instead of fighting through partially blocked galleys. Lifter tick that sounded like it needed an expensive top-end repair quiets down because oil is reaching components it was previously struggling to reach. And because you did this gently, over 10 controlled minutes instead of blasting it with an aggressive bottled chemical, your old seals and gaskets that were finally sealed up thanks to years of sludge buildup are far less likely to suddenly start weeping the way they do after a harsh commercial flush. Now let's talk about the mistakes that turn this $3 trick into a costly disaster, because this is the part shops don't want you attempting on your own, and frankly, some of these warnings exist for good reason. Never, under any circumstance, do this on an engine that's already showing signs of internal mechanical failure, like metal shavings in the oil or a knocking sound under load. Thinning the oil on an engine that's already metal on metal will accelerate failure, not prevent it. This method is for maintenance and sludge removal on an otherwise healthy, running engine, not a rescue mission for a dying one. Ventilation matters more than people expect. Kerosene and diesel vapor are flammable, and you are running an engine, a heat source, for 10 straight minutes with that vapor present. Do this in an open garage with the door up, or outdoors. Never in a sealed space. Keep any open flame, any spark source, any cigarette, far away from the area the entire time. Never overfill past that 10 to 15% ratio, thinking more will clean faster. Doubling the amount doesn't double your results. It just doubles how unprotected your bearings are for that 10-minute window, and it dramatically increases fire risk from vapor buildup in the crankcase. And never let this become a habit you do every single oil change. This is a targeted, occasional intervention for a genuinely sludged up engine, ideally done once, maybe repeated one more time a few thousand miles later if the first pass pulled out heavy contamination. After that, if you're staying on top of regular oil changes with the correct interval, your engine simply won't build up the kind of sludge this method is designed to remove. The $3 jug of kerosene sitting on a shelf next to the paint thinner has quietly been doing what $200 shop flushes promise, minus the aggressive detergents that shock old seals, minus the risk of chunky sludge clogging your pickup screen, and minus the markup that pays for a machine and a technician's time instead of paying for actual results. 10 minutes at idle. The right ratio. An immediate drain. That's the entire secret mechanics have been quietly using on fleet vehicles for years, and now you're not guessing at it anymore. You know exactly why it works, exactly how long to run it, and exactly what happens if you push your luck past that